So I wanted to talk about a particularly interesting strike that's going on of the Kellogg company. So they're the dudes who make like Fruit Loops and Frosted Flakes and stuff. Raisin Bran, apparently. I think they make Raisin Bran. I didn't realize that. But anyway, so they are. So there's 1,400 workers that have been on strike since October 5th, which is a long time. And they have been, they've been protesting it. And the question is sort of what's interesting about this is not so much that they're protesting. The reason that I wanted to bring it up is because of what they're protesting, which is a two-tier wage system. So essentially, the idea is that there's going to be the people who currently are working. They're going to keep having their same benefits. They're going to get their same pay, but new employees that come into the company are going to do the same job that these older people have been doing for a long period of time, but they're going to be getting paid less. And what's interesting about this is that actually the people who are protesting, the people who are striking currently, aren't the ones who are going to be getting the primary value of what they're protesting. And I find it really fascinating because it's an example of people really doing what's in the interest of themselves, sure, at some level, because at some level the idea is that over time this might sort of encourage the workforce or sort of the company rather, to try to get new people who are on the lower of those tiers, right? They're not going to be getting the same amount of pay that these people who have been working there for a while have been getting. But the primary beneficiaries of this strike are actually not going to be the people who are striking. It's rather the people who aren't working there yet. I just find it really impressive, and I think it's worth pointing out that class solidarity is really complicated. Class solidarity is really complicated, particularly in an increasingly complex fiscal system. And I think that we've been talking a lot about sort of what it looks like to have a moral compass in the context of sort of being a content creator, being Hassan Piker, being Vosh, being Destiny, any of those. And I've strongly stated a number of times in the past on this channel, as is Houston, that it's really important that we are paying people, and that, but not just that we're paying people in the context of work that doesn't have a single payer, that is sort of on market, constantly negotiating their salary independently. They're independent contractors, right? Which is essentially everything in social media is an independent contractor. But it's also really important to be thinking about what class solidarity means in different contexts. So this is an example of people who are thinking, okay, I am doing what's in my interest, kind of, but primarily what they're doing is something that's in the interest of people who aren't even part of their company yet. They're not doing this for their friends. They're not doing this for their fellow workers who are already there. They're doing this for the future workers that are going to be working at Kellogg's going into the future. And I think that's really impressive. I think that's a really powerful statement. And I similarly think that it's powerful when you're independent contractor, which again, that's a YouTuber, that's a Twitch streamer, that's anyone sort of in that whole world. It's really important that you're sharing salary information. Sharing salary information is just such an important and valuable thing that I just don't think that people talk about nearly enough. Because when you do it, the result is that now everyone knows what your value of your work is, and therefore they're able to compare against themselves. So if you're getting underpaid, now someone can call you up and say, "Hey, buddy, you're like definitely getting underpaid. You are doing this, and this that's the reason that advertisers say are exploiting you in the context of that, or that's the reason that if you're, let's say a photographer for a wedding photographer, my aunt is a wedding photographer, you're being exploited in X and X and X contexts, and that's a really big problem, and here's in a way that you can benefit yourself, and vice versa. If you're getting paid really well, then you now have an ability to help other people who are also in your industry, and I think that this is just sort of a really important thing to be thinking about going into the future, because the truth is that as we get a more and more complicated system, as much as I think that these Kellogg protests and these strikes are really valuable, the majority of work is not necessarily going to look like the kind of work that we're talking about here, and the kinds of plants that we're talking about here with these giant sort of manufacturing hubs, these giant kinds of factories, whatever you want to call it. Because I think that this is sort of a component of work, yes, but it's not the only component. And I think that we need to understand that class solidarity doesn't end. It just begins in the context of sort of these large hubs where lots of people do similar kinds of work. I think that it's something it exist across the entire economy.